So this here is a brand new Garmin Venu 4, a watch I've just started putting through its paces, but there are a boatload of new features to dive into. In fact, when I first got the marketing emails on this new watch explaining all the new features, I was honestly pretty disappointed. It didn't seem like there was much in the way of new features. In reality, they skipped talking about all the new features. There is an astonishing number of new features here, and somehow only 3 of them made it to the press release. This is actually not the only part of Garmin announced today. They also announced their new kids bounce watches. Talk about this in a separate video, but the other watch that came out was the new Instinct crossover. I've already got that video up in the corner. This is the watch that actually has mechanical hands that you can see there. Super cool stuff, so check that out. So with that, I'll just simply get right into all the newness. The very first new feature is the addition of an LED flashlight, so you can see that up at the top there. I hold the bottom right hand button, turn it on. There is 4 different levels of brightness, as well as that red light there too. Same thing we've seen on their other watches. We saw also introduced the Venu X1, that's their higher end Venu, back a couple months ago. Now we have it here as well. Likewise, it's got a new brighter display. So this is a much brighter display than the previous Venu 3. This is the same display as seen on the Garmin Forerunner 570 and 970. And while I never really had any issues seeing the previous display outside, now it's even brighter, as you can see from the shot right here in my run. Again, no issues at all from a display brightness standpoint, especially for me living in a bright, sunny location. Haven't had any problems there. Now, the next feature is totally new to Garmin entirely, which is lifestyle logging. Another cool part is this feature is coming to all Garmin users. It's there as of today on Garmin Connect, and it's very similar to the feature that Whoop introduced back a couple years ago that basically allows you to journal or write down various things that happen during the day, each day at the end of the day, and then from there it starts to correlate all these things after about a month and starts to figure out that, hey, if you journal you had late caffeine, then you had poor sleep the next night, it figures all this kind of stuff out. There are a whole bunch of different behaviors that you can choose. You can kind of have a template for each day of your most common ones like caffeine, exercise, etc. But you can also create custom ones as well. You'll see those categories at the top. There's all, lifestyle, self-care, and treatments. I thought it was interesting in the all category. If I go down, there is light exercise before bed, moderate exercise before bed, vigorous exercise before bed, but no exercise during bed, which is funny only because Whoop actually does have a category for that in their journaling, and they don't have it here. So, that seems like a Garmin thing to omit that one. But in any case, you can add it as a custom behavior down below. There we go. Save. Done. Now, in addition to doing this on the phone, again, every single Garmin Connect user can do this on the phone. It's not requiring Connect Plus. Maybe Garmin's feeling a little bit guilty about all the feedback there, but this is open to everyone. You can also do it on the Venu 4. So if I scroll down there, you'll see the lifestyle logging option, and I can log basically those same things here on the watch. Garmin says this feature is coming to other new watches, recent watches anyways, sometime soonish in the next quarterly updates, but they're not defining out what watches that will be. My guess here is to be all the 2025 watches, and then probably the Fenix 8 as well, since that's sharing the same firmware with the Fenix 8 Pro that came out. But that's just my guess. Again, they haven't committed to anything there yet. Now, in terms of things you could commit to, it would be watching this entire video all the way through. That's the only thing the YouTube gods care about these days, and it really does help with this video and the channel quite a bit. Now, the next feature they've added as well to Garmin Connect for all users and on the watch is the health status feature. So what this does is basically, again, follows very similar to what we've seen both Whoop and Apple do, kind of consolidates 5 core key metrics. Those metrics being heart rate, HRV, respiration, skin temp, and pulse ox. So these ones are automatically calculated and figured out from your data, but you'll see this data on your watch as well as on the app. Now, again, everyone gets this data on the app for free, assuming your device supports those different features there. So for example, HRV needs to be roughly like the Phoenix 6-ish or so generation time frame, so like 3 or 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago and sooner, but all that stuff is there for free, and then some number of watches will also eventually get it on the watch itself, so you can see that there too. The next new feature is new to Garmin entirely, which is the sleep alignment feature. So this is something that's basically tracking to whatever your normal circadian rhythm is, and it shows you that compared to your sleep last night. It's pretty straightforward in that sense. That said, this too requires 3 weeks until you're going to start seeing this data. Why this requires 3 weeks is beyond me. They have the data from my Garmin account for the last decade. I just wish this stuff would work at launch as opposed to having to wait all this time. Though one feature that is new that is working at launch is a sleep consistency feature. So you can see that immediately down in the sleep coaching area. And again, Garmin says these 2 new features will go to other new watches as well, but they haven't again defined what those watches are. Now, the next feature isn't so much something that you're gonna like easily spot, but I think is probably the most important thing on this entire list, which is the fact that the Venu 4 now shares the same underlying Garmin OS as the Forerunner 570 and 970, the Fenix 8 and Fenix 8 Pro, the Venu X1, and some other watches I'm probably forgetting. This is the new common operating system that Garmin is using under the covers for all their watches, and it means features will both be rolled out faster, but more importantly, when bugs are fixed, they're fixed across all those devices at the same time. In the past, each team kind of had a similar like base starting point, but they were all over the place. Everything now is the same. Now, that does not mean the features will be the same, but it means that if those features are enabled on the watch, then those will be identical in terms of the interfaces, the switches, the toggles, and all that kind of stuff. So if you've been around Garmin a long time, you know this is a huge deal that should really help with some of the quality issues. Now, one of the benefits of that, or as we're seeing here, is the addition of the evening report. And that basically will recap your day very similar to the morning report that you would have typically seen on the past in the Venu. The evening report does the same thing at, again, the evening side. Next, there's another new feature entirely to Garmin, which is that you open up the mixed session sport profile, and then you choose what sport you want to start with. Then at the end of that sport that you started with, you hit the pause button and it'll ask what next sport you want to do from there. So the idea being like in a gym scenario where you may go from one thing to the next thing and so on that are totally different. Like maybe you're going to do a treadmill bit for a bit or whatever you're going to do, you can now iterate through those. Now there isn't like a huge difference between how this works and the change sport feature works. It just seems like it's a little bit easier now to kind of move things along. Beyond that, they've also matched all the other sport profiles that you would have seen on the Forerunner 570. I'm going to scroll through all these profiles right here, but this is a huge list of roughly 80 sport profiles, and once again really consolidates and assures that all of Garmin's watches, for the most part below the $1,000 price point, are all on exactly the same sport profile listing. And then in turn, in the future, when they add new sport profiles every quarter or so, which they usually add a couple here and there, that means that all these watches get it at the exact same time as one cohesive thing. Next, they've added dual frequency or multi-band GPS. That's primarily useful in really tricky satellite environments, downtown New York City, for example, or up against like cliff slides in the mountains, stuff like that. Though, as I've said in recent videos, Garmin's non-multi-band, non-dual frequency GPS is astonishingly good. So I see this as more of a minor thing as opposed to a major thing, but I definitely appreciate it nonetheless. Likewise, for the sports side, they've added a bunch of new sensor types because again, it's that same underlying platform here. So they've added the extended display, they've added club sensors, that's golf club sensors, they've added in-reach device connectivity, shifting, so that's electronic bike shifting, as well as Shimano Di2 shifting. Previously, they had all the ones I've listed at the bottom of the screen as well. So pretty much all the sensor types are now supported here for all these sub $1,000 watches. Now, the next three features are ones that are totally new to any Garmin watches whatsoever and follow in the footsteps of the Garmin Venu team generally adding new accessibility features. So the first accessibility feature is that you can have it read out the time using the speaker that's in there. There is a speaker and microphone in this watch. There is no LTE. So if I enable that feature in the settings, I can just press the back button and it will tell me the time.
4:59 p.m.
It's not a super loud speaker in the grand scheme of things, so yeah. The next part of that is though the ability to read out the rest of health metrics that you have on your watch face. So all of the things there, you can read that out as well. Here's an example of that.
7:12 p.m. Intensity minutes, 279 minutes. Today, 79 minutes. Steps, 9,717. Goal, 10,910. Heart rate, 77.
And then the final new accessibility feature is to help those with color blindness, that you can basically have 4 different color filter options that you see right there. And this is in addition to the existing accessibility options like the wheelchair modes and things like that that they added last time around. I know for the general population, those features probably aren't all that exciting, but for those people that are impacted, these are super helpful features. Probably the second most important thing to understand about this watch is the fact that it is essentially a Garmin Forerunner 570 minus a couple buttons. So the 570 came out this past spring. It's designed for runners, but this watch here got all those same features. Again, one of the benefits of this common platform there. So I'm not going to go through every single one of these features very in depth here. In fact, if you check out my Forerunner 970 beginner's guide, I'll link that in the corner there. I go through each one of these features in a lot more depth and how they work, but I want to quickly just kind of name them all off. First off, they added automatic track detection. So that means if you're just in the regular run profile and you go to the running track, it automatically snaps to the running track. I actually just did that this past weekend. It worked great. Two, they they added the Autolap by timing gates feature that's primarily used in races where you want to ensure that your pacing matches what the course is, as opposed to all the extra distance that you would have had kind of weaving through the course and whatnot. Next, at those same races, if you forgot to hit the stop button at the finish line when you're getting that photo and all, and then later on you realize you forgot to hit stop, the watch will actually backdate it to the end of the course file, which is pretty clever. So that's an option. 4, they've added the load ratio within the training status. And again, all of the training status pieces, all of the training readiness, all that kind of stuff here is now in parity with the Forerunner 570. Again, that's a pretty big deal. Next, if you've got a race on your calendar, it'll show you future projected finish time estimates for that particular race. So it looks at your training, it looks where you are, and then projects out in the future that estimated finish time. They've also added heat and altitude acclimation, and they've added the full focus modes that we saw roll out starting with the Fenix 8. And of course, there's a bunch of other features beyond that, but those are sort of the big ticket ones from the 570. However, this does have something the 570 doesn't have in terms of hardware, which is ECG support using the sensor on the back there. The Forerunner 570 has this new optical heart rate sensor, but does not have all the components inside of it to do full ECGs versus this does for Afib detection. And that kind of dives right into some of the other external pieces here, which is that the Venu 4 does have a full metal case on the outside versus the Venu 3 only has a metal bezel. Also, you'll notice they got rid of a button just because they said no third button. It's now 2 buttons. Note with the Forerunner 570 has 5 buttons. That's a common 5-button layout that I personally prefer. You see that on the Instinct, on the Phoenix, on the Forerunner lineup, versus this is back to just 2 buttons. I still like the middle button. I just like more buttons, as simple as that. Now, there still is 2 sizes of the Venu. There's the smaller one at 41 millimeters, and the larger one, this is what I have here, at 45 millimeter. And then from a battery perspective, the smaller unit has the same battery life as past, versus a larger unit does decrease that slightly. Sounds like the decreases are coming from this much brighter display and some of the other internal bits there, but the impact isn't huge. Instead, the huge thing is the price increase. $100. This goes from $449 up to $549. That's the same price as the Forerunner 570. On the case of the 570, you have a button-first layout. You can use touch for virtually everything, but you have the buttons as well there, and no ECG. In the case of the Venu 4, you have less buttons, but you do have ECGs. So you ultimately have to kind of decide what you want there. I asked Garmin like why they did this. Why bring up the price of the Venu 4 so high? And they said there's a lot of people that want that touch first layout of the Venu and the sleeker metal case and whatnot compared to the more sporty side of the Forerunner. Basically all those same features for those folks at, again, that same price point. So Garmin's essentially saying you have the choice between the sportier side of the Forerunner or the kind of more sleeker case, if you will, I guess, of the Venu 4. Still, I feel like that leaves a pretty big gap where Garmin was competing directly head-to-head with the Apple Watch Series 10, 11, whatever you want, as well as the Google Pixel Watch and the Samsung Galaxy Watches, those base editions at that roughly $400 price point. And now they seem to be entirely abandoning that range. There is now a huge gap in price between someone that was looking at a $400 watch and comparing the kind of 4 vendors in that realm there, and someone that's now looking at a $550 watch. I don't know, that seems like a pretty big gap. That's surprising to me that Garmin leave on the table there. They do have their Vivo Active that's cheaper in price, but that's missing a lot of the features. So again, it's just a huge emptiness in their lineup there that I'm surprised they're leaving that door open, but that's their choice. Anyways, there you go. All the differences between the Venu 3 and the Venu 4. Don't forget to stay tuned for the new Garmin Bounce video once that's up, and also check out the new Instinct crossover video up in the corner. And there is still a boatload more things coming over the next 7 to 10 days. It continues to be crazy around these parts. With that, have a good one.